lime in the ground treatment or ground improvement. The lime treatment is something that has been quite popular with many of the civil engineers, and whenever there is a problem with the soft soils and expansive soils, the lime treatment has been given, and essentially to improve the bearing capacity and reduce the settlements. We will see how this lime treatment can be affected in the field, and what are the various factors that can influence the treatment. And we also have some case studies here, and for example, lime can be used for pavements, the lime columns could be used for improvement of bearing capacity and all that. These are all some typical failures that one can see. So, you can see a heave here, you can see very clearly a heave of the pavement, because you can see that when the expansive soil is subjected to alternate wetting and drying, and definitely when there are some places where there could be more changes than the rest, like so this is one place where there is a good amount of heaving in one place, with the result that the pavement has been damaged beyond any repair or whatever. So, this needs to be repaired in a proper way, and also like one should, the way that one should do is that you should be able to examine why this has occurred, what are the issues that are involved, because you have a materials here, you have various layers of the subgrade, subbase and all that, and one should examine why this has occurred. This is another thing that we have, like a crack like in a pavement. This is another one that one can see, particularly problems with expansive soils are quite common. Even this is another case that we see, this is another one that one can see. In fact, one can measure the failures. In fact, if you do not understand the treatment process, say for example, people have been talking about treatments, and if the treatment is not correct, then even it could lead to premature failures like this. So, the important thing in this case would be that we should be able to understand why these failures are occurring, whether it is in the case of a soft soil or an expansive soil, because all these soils are coming into picture because they are essentially poor in terms of their strength properties and settlement issues. So, one should be really worried about how do you handle this, and there should be a systematic way of understanding this techniques. Otherwise, there could be a problem where the technique may not be properly implemented in the field, and finally it leads to problems, much more problems. Like for example, I must tell you the classical case of the lime treatment itself. Lime treatment is very effective if there is no sulphate in the soil, but then if sulphate is present in the same expansive soil, then it becomes worse. So, for example, the expansive nature is in terms of the liquid limit of the soil or the free swell and whatever. There are a number of tests that one can do, and people have shown that if you have the sulphate material in the soil and then you try to give a lime treatment to that, it cannot be effective. That is so which means that lime treatment, if you want to make it effective, you should really check up if the sulphate is there. If it is not there, then you go ahead with the lime treatment. And lime treatment is also sometimes you need to add some sort of additives like a fly ash or a cement, depending on the requirements. So, we will just discuss today some points of this, like we have some method, I mean how is it done and what are its applications, its method of doing, what are the mechanics of stabilization, what are the shear strength improvements people have observed, how the settlements have been improved because of this. In fact, how do you go about designing the foundation or even pavement and all that, how can you do that, and some case studies and quality control measures we will see. So, the stabilization using lime is an established practice to improve the characteristics of fine grained soils. Actually, it has been quite effective in all the fine grained soils, not necessarily expansive soils. Whatever, if the soils are fine grained, or which means that they have high specific surface, like say for example, it can be just because of certain ions present in the material, or because of the water present in the materials. So, essentially the liquid limit and plasticity characteristics are reflected in higher values. Say for example, higher is the liquid limit, you say definitely higher is the specific surface. So, in treating this particularly fine grained soils, lime treatment has been very effective. The first applications in the construction of the highways and airfield pavements were reported in 1950s and 60s. With proven success of these attempts, the technique was extended for large scale treatment using lime for stabilization of subgrades as well as improvement of bearing capacity of foundations in the form of lime columns. So, what we should see is that what are the mechanisms, and as I just said, the mechanism, it results in improvement of shear strength, compressibility and permeability. So, what are the reasons or mechanisms? There are a couple of issues here. One, we call it cation exchange capacity or the cation exchange, we call it flocculation, we call the other one as aggregation. So, this aggregation is essentially a function of the time and the temperature. We will see what is cation exchange. We know when you are trying to deal with soils or particularly clays, the cation exchange is an important aspect. Like we know that the clays are negatively charged surfaces, and the possibility is that when you add some material like lime or something, there is a replacement of ions. So, for example, there is a sodium ion, then it gets replaced by calcium ion. So, there is to that extent, if you have a sodium bentonite, if you add the calcium, a lot of calcium, then sodium gets replaced and it becomes a calcium bentonite. So, this is what is called cation exchange capacity. So, this is because of this mechanism of cation exchange capacity that there is a replacement of cations that takes place on the clay surface, and this is in this order. So, for example, the lithium, then sodium, like if the hydrogen. So, these are all in the single valence ions, and as you have a higher material, then higher that replaces the lower valency ions. So, for example, these three are all single, and then if you have a divalent ions, there is a possibility that it gets replaced by higher valency ions, and if you have aluminum, definitely it replaces calcium, and so it also it is also a function of the ionic radius as well. So, essentially this is a rule in which many of the replacements take place, and the cation exchange capacity depends on the pH of the soil, like water. The thing is that there is a pore water, and the pore water, if it has some pH, definitely it has a big influence on the cation exchange capacity, and also the type of the clay mineral. We know that there are the different types of clay mineral, and it is montmorillonite, kyanite and illite and all that, and the specific surface of the montmorillonite is very high, and because of which, say for example, sodium bentonite has a highest cation exchange capacity, whereas calcium bentonite has definitely very much lower capacity just because of the valency. So, some of these things are already well known in geotechnical engineering, particularly when you are trying to study the soil behavior and clays. And the quicklime, there are different types of materials here. One can add CaO like calcium oxides or a calcium hydroxide or even calcium carbonate, but suppose we have this material, what it leads to is that it dissociates in water, and then you form certain compounds, and actually you can see that there is also energy release. So, what happens is that when you add a lime in any form, whether it can be calcium hydroxide or a calcium oxide, it increases, it results in hydration, it results in hydration, and it increases the electric concentration as well. Say for example, what happens is that there is a tendency for the particles to come together and then so it increases electrolytic concentration and the pH, everything increases, it dissolves the silicates and eliminates from the clay particles, and as I just mentioned, sodium ions and other cations are absorbed to the clay mineral, are exchanged with calcium ions. So, this particular behavior of ion exchange is something that is very important, because the ion exchange leads to reduce the specific surface, and also some sort of even it could alter the particle arrangement and all that. So, it is a quite an effective mechanism by which the water content in a material could be reduced if you particularly add calcium. The second mechanism is that we try to say in terms of the flocculated structure formation. Normally untreated clays, the clays have this sort of matrix where they are all parallel shaped, like we assume that, say for example, you take a montmorillonite, and montmorillonite has a sort of a orientation like this, where you have water in between them, there is a lot of swelling here in the vertical direction, and say the structure is a trap of water between the, whatever is that, there is a trap of water here everywhere, and it causes big changes in the water content. But if you add calcium, what happens, say for example, in treated clays, like they have a replace the sodium and hydrogen atoms, they produce some sort of structure like this. You have what is called edge to face flocculation, like the edges, and there is an arrangement like this. You can see that there is an important arrangement that is formed here, which we call it flocculating or agglomeration. So, this thing will really compared to the dispersed structure that we have here, the flocculated structure is something that's very important here, and it changes the behavior reasonably completely, because the water content, the way it holds the water, it handles the water will be much different. So, for example, you can imagine that water is added to this, there is lot of swelling, and water also can be removed because of shrinkage. So, what it means is that this has a tendency for lot of variations, but here the thing is that water changes could be there, but the water is stored between the an arrangement like this, and then because of the edge to face flocculation, you will not have that much order of volume changes or water content variations. This is an important concept that one should remember here. Another important property that we should understand, that lime gives a sort of pozzolanic character to the mixed soil. What it means is that it results in calcium silicate and calcium aluminate hydrate materials, and also changes in the fabric changes. So, it leads to two compounds like this, and it is like we understand that the same compounds also exist in cement as well. It is like a cementitious material it is trying to behave. Like now the soil is supposed to be very poor, now we got rid of all the water present in by ion exchange and aggregation, and the other one is in the long run the cementation materials, the compounds, cementitious materials formation is something that is very important, and because of the cementation the strength of the soil is much higher. So, this is one important reaction, and the formation of the compounds is a very valuable addition to the actual response. Actually, sometimes what we do is that we also add a bit of cement in some cases, because we know that cement is already it is much faster, it reacts faster, the formation of compounds is much faster compared to soils. So, suppose we have only a lime column, lime plus cement can be added, in the lime, along with lime people can also add a bit of cement to see that the cement, the whole process of putting the stone columns or lime columns or any of these materials could be faster. So, essentially there are three mechanisms, one is the cation exchange, the second thing is flocculation, the third one is pozzolanic reaction. So, this is what is that particular thing. So, you have a calcium hydroxide formation here, the ongoing reaction with the available silica and alumina in the soil forms complex cementitious materials. So, you can see that there is a cementation that occurs, and we add sometimes, as I said, in the clay. For example, we add lime and fly ash also, like cement also one can add, it depends on, if you want improvement in cement properties, you can add cement, but fly ash or any other material could be added, because you are trying to increase the particle size there. Suppose the fly ash particle size is much higher than the this clay, and fly ash also is somewhat pozzolanic. Actually, some fly ashes are pozzolanic, actually they form cementitious compounds, fly ash could be added. So, these are all quite important. And what are the factors that influence the characteristics of the lime treated clay? One should be able to understand the characteristics of the lime treated clay, and one is the type of lime, whether it is a quicklime or a hydrated lime content, like what is the percentage that you are trying to add, the curing time. So, for example, it can be different from 1 day, 2nd day, 1 week, 1 month, 1 year, it can be different. People have observed that these properties will increase with time because of the formation of cementitious compounds. So, the property of the behavior of the lime treated clay is a function of curing time as well. Then the type of soil, like, so for example, essentially the what type of soil, essentially what type of is it a CH or a CI or whatever type of, say for example, depending on its plastic characteristics, one can say, right, plastic characteristics and shrinkage limit and all that, that is also another material. Then clay mineral is another important variable. We have say for example, sodium, the montmorillonite materials, and then we also have illite and kyanite. Even the presence of this the type of mineral also influences. Soil pH is another important variable. Curing temperature is another variable. Why? Because as I said, the chemical reactions to take some time, the rate of reaction could be higher when the temperature is somewhat higher. So, this is another variable. This is a typical example of how the mixture of lime with water can change the plastic characteristics. For example, if you see the liquid limit, it is about 60% here, with 2 addition of percentage of lime 2, 4, 6 and 8, liquid limit has come down some 60 to 40%. Then the plasticity index from 42, it has come down to about 5%. It is a very good difference. Then the shrinkage limit is increasing, like say as I just mentioned, the particles which have a parallel plate arrangement, say for example bentonite, will have a very high water content and very low shrinkage limit also. So, like say for example, if I made the 9% is a too low value, normally you will have some 15, 20 something like that, even a shrinkage limit. But so the moment you add lime, what happens is that the particle arrangement changes and it holds more water, as I just showed in the previous figure, that the H2 phase flocculation occurs, and as a result the water content will be higher, though the shrinkage limit is little higher, and even the plasticity index is also lower. So, which means that you have comfortably reduced the plasticity characteristics of the soil, you have made the soil not so much shrinkable compared to the previous case. Like say for example, take the same soil, 60 to 9, 51% is the range of water contents at which it can show variations. But if you add water, you see the difference is too big, like liquid limit minus shrinkage limit. You come somewhere here, the liquid limit is something 40, 36 or something, shrinkage limit also quite high. So, it is a very important thing that what it means is that water content variations will not influence the response too much. Actually that is, see, people can do lot of testing on some of these materials, like one can do basic index property tests, you can get some information. One can do unconfined compression tests, UCC tests that we are familiar with, or leaching tests. Many tests could be done, and here you can see that actually in Arlington University, Dr. Ananda Puppala has conducted lot of tests on this, and with after 7 cycles of the lime treated, you can see that it has not, it is okay, I mean the strength is okay. They have done some sort of test in which you are able to see the strength response. Actually the thing is that the behavior of soil is influenced by cyclical, alternate wetting and drying cycles. This is another thing that you see here, that volume change response, and say for example, if with the addition of lime of 8% and then the dominant clay mineral is kaolinite and the plastic index is 31, during wetting and drying the volume change has come down over a number of cycles. This is another important, 21 cycles they have tested. You can see that untreated material is like this, whereas treated material is like this. What it means is that the treated material is able to withstand more number of variations because of minimum change in water content, whereas you can see that the untreated material has a big volume change. It can have a volume it is actually expansion, this is shrinkage, minus sign shows shrinkage. So here you can see that even if there is a number of cycles have been done, the extent of change, it is 6%, whereas it is 20% here. So it is quite a big difference when you try to treat the in situ soil or expand soil with lime, and it is a good difference. The content here is about 8%, its number of cycles have been done here. There is another one, unconfined compression test. Again see that it is somewhere here. In the case of untreated material, the shear strength used actually it is so poor that it is a very small value, but here you can see that the kaolinite of course is the dominating clay mineral here. It is quite consistent here in the range of about 80 psi, which is like if you just convert, one can convert into using a several multiplication factor to get into kPa, and this is quite a good number. Here in this case it is a dominating material is montmorillonite, and the previous case is all kaolinite. Here in this case it is montmorillonite. See, montmorillonite it is about 40%, the difference in the case of, but then over a number of cycles it has come down to 10%. Here also about strength you can see that number of cycles are, the strength reduction is there, and then it is very drastic here. What we meant was that the strength reductions are also a function of the clay mineral. In fact, I just mentioned in the beginning that the type of soil has an influence in controlling the volume change, and also the type of clay minerals. So, for example, if you take a clay of high plasticity, it will have a very good effect, whereas if you take a low plasticity soil, it will not have that much effect. So, with this and then the clay mineral is also another important result which has been brought out very well by Professor Puppala, where like they were all working on the thing is that they had a peculiar problem of pavements and expanse soils in Texas University, and Texas whole state of Texas has lot of expanse soils, and they were working very seriously on why though the treatment is done, the soil treatment has not been effective. So, they were able to investigate and come out with a couple of reasons on why the line treatment has not been effective here, and so that being the basic information on how do we understand the soil behavior when lime is used as an admixture, we should be able to understand how do you do in the field. What we do in the field is that actually you have to take the first step of remove the large elements which might hinder the mixing of lime. Mixing in, we just mix up the lime, and so we try to say, for example, if you are trying to make a road, you have to really clean this material, and also what happens is that if you just digging and all that you do, the humidity also gets altered, and one can, if you do not have machines, one can even do with a simple pluff and all that. And what the second, so once you clear the do the proper grading arrangements in the field, what should be done is that you can spread the lime. They have a mission here, one can have a mission which is like a tractor one can have in India, and of course we have, in fact I must say that we have Indian Roads Congress guidelines on how to stabilize soils in for roads. Okay. So, the lime should be dispersed in this particular material, and how much of lime is coming out of this material is very clearly known by a weighing device. The lime is supplied pneumatically to the spreader. Spreader is something that it distributes, like you have a water sprinkler type of thing for you must have seen lot of vehicles like this. So, you also have a sprinkling of lime here, and this has some containers which is called silos and all that. So, so once you have this spread, then you have to do the mixing. Mixing of the purpose is to spread out the soil, while at the same time mixing is evenly done. You have to properly mix and see that this can be done with pulvey mixers, rotary paddlers, and many things can be used to really mix the both of the topsoil and the say for example 20 centimeters at 30 centimeters you would like to mix, you remove that much amount of soil and put that and then mix them thoroughly and then do the compaction. That is what we do normally. So, compaction thickness should be properly determined, as I just mentioned in the beginning, in layers of 30 centimeters or 25 centimeters it should be done. That should be arrived at based on some testing, and after grading, like once you just see that put a tape and then see that okay, this is say the thickness of the material put was about say 300 or 400 mm, then you put the rolling there and then do it, and then maybe the compacted thick some 400 it may come down to 400 mm to 300 mm it can come down, and that could be that could correspond to the maximum dry density and optimum moisture content using the lime. Okay. So, that is what is important, and once you achieve that it is fine, the road is ready, and then after that you can go for subsequent layers. This is just in the case of unpaved road. Now, you are trying to lay the say for example and then expansive soil subgrade, you remove some amount of material and then use this. In fact, there are some places where you can't even walk, and sometimes using the lime can really make the surface workable. That is like what happens, water is released, then the soil fabric changes and all that. One can do some sort of loading operations quite comfortably. That is what people have been doing in the olden days. I will just give you some example of durability studies that were conducted by a company which deals exclusively with lime treatment. In fact, they have taken lime treatment as their own profession, and then they go about doing this job very well. Similar to a field CBR, similar to in situ laboratory CBR, we can also do the in situ CBR test. They have done the in situ CBR test for the existing soil and then lime untreated soil. So, this is what say for example, the in situ CBR of the lime treated soil was done at this point, in situ CBR of the untreated soil was done at this point. So, you have these two measurements, and over a period of time for the pavement layer which has a lime treated soil as well as a GSB as well as the asphalt pavement, they are trying to compare what is happening. So, they measured the CBR only, and you can see that for example, these are the different counties in years. Okay. These are all the highways. Okay. The time duration of studying 11 years, 12 years, 13, 14, you can just see the number of years of study. Then say because the area is being different, you have different types of plastic index values. You can see 6 to 21, in this it is a higher range 24 to 41, and 16 to 45. So, say the highest and lowest are here, and what is the amount of lime added? It is about 4 to 5%, 6% is here, somewhere here, and in situ CBR of the untreated subgrade, it is 2%. You can see 2, 2.43 and like this, but then once the treatment was done, the average CBR well is improved so much, like about 40%, 40, 31, 101. Okay, you can see that 101%. You can see it is high numbers. It is a very good number, and definitely it helps. So, these are all the same thing that is plotted in terms of histogram for all the areas that they studied, and it is very clearly you can see that lime treatment has been very effective, and so the advantage is that the limitation of the need for embankment materials to be brought in from outside and the elimination of the transporting costs. The big difference that you are getting is that you do not need to neglect the soil. The in situ soil is there, you can treat it with lime and make it embankment material. So, the cost of transportation of the material itself is less. The embankment material, say for example, if you want to get a clayey material or a clayey sand or sandy clay material which is somewhat good in its properties, it is very difficult to get, particularly in areas where there is lot of soft soil or expansive soil. So, that way when you have this, definitely you have both, actually the cost of material is not there, and even the elimination of the transporting costs, and the reduction of the transport movements in the immediate vicinity of the construction site. Machines can move about with greater ease. What I just mentioned was that, like the soil is so poor, nothing can move, but then if you just put some sort of lime or sprinkle lime, and definitely there will be some reactions take place, and within a you can start using that. In fact, I was just mentioning a few minutes back that it takes 2 hours to have the initial reactions to take place. In fact, I just need to mention that, say for example, in warm climates, how much of how much of time you should wait. Just 2 hours is sufficient. You sprinkle the lime on that material and try to mix it, and then that material becomes easy to handle. One can work with that. So, delays due to weather conditions can reduce, leading to improved productivity. In fact, this is another important variable. As a result, the overall what happens, see the weather conditions are very poor, like if the area is if there is a rainy season and all that, and there is not much change in the water content, or the thing is you would like to do that work, whatever water removal and all is not easy. You want to, in a rainy season you want to remove the water, it is not that easy. But if you add lime in that stage, definitely the weather condition, even one can overcome weather conditions and treat that soil area. Say for example, the total surrounding conditions are like the ambient temperature is very low. So, for example, in US sometimes in winter it can be very nasty, and then you can't expect that you should wait for some 6 months or something. So, one can use lime and then bring about whatever construction operations you can do, start with that and then make things ready. So, this is one thing, and this helps in the overall cost as well. The structures have a longer service life, like embankments, and capping layers means cover, like a pavement. Capping or pavement is same. They are cheaper to maintain, because definitely you have made the in situ soil as a much better material, or whatever is that fill material you are using, that it is much better, because the strength properties are expected to be much better, the compressibility, everything are much improved. Okay. So, now I will talk about lime columns. Excuse me, hello?
Yeah, tell me, sir.
There is no clock here.
Oh, timer is not there.
Oh, it's there. Okay, okay, it's there. Okay.
Okay,
So
you can
no. The thing is, you are putting in another place. I am only watching there.
Now you are able to find it?
Yeah.
Yeah,
Okay.
then you can continue.
I am not able to synchronize my this thing, and I am looking for watch most of the time than that. Okay. Thank you. Okay. So, I think you can edit it proper. Okay. So, now I would be talking about lime columns, which is quite again an innovation in lime columns. This it was, you know, if you go to Scandinavian countries like Denmark and Sweden and all that, the soil is so soft, you do not get clay sand at all, and you may say about any other technique, it will not be very you know, easy, like geotextiles and geosynthetics, they came recently, but in 70s and 60s it is a prefabricated vertical drains, and many people have also worked on different techniques. In fact, one Professor Brahms, he is actually from Swedish Geotechnical Institute, SGI it is called. They did lot of work on lime columns and lime stabilization. They have an ASC paper on how to construct lime columns. In this, actually the thing is that the in the case of roads, it is simple mixing, and then we need about top half a meter or something to treatment, half meter to 1 meter. But you are trying to talk about embankments which are say 5 meters height, or you want to have a what you call the foundations, loading from foundations on soft soils, you have to treat the soft soil in some manner. Okay. So, when you do that, so the alternatives we discussed about stone columns and other methods, lime columns are also very important, because when you have you know, the advantage is that, see, in expensive soils lime columns are better definitely, and soft soils lime columns could be also used. Of course, you have other techniques as we just discussed, prefabricated vertical drains and stone columns are there, already there. This is another method. So, you have number of methods in trying to improve the bearing capacity and reduce the settlement. So, what we do is that in this technique we assume that the improved soil column in the bore is acting as a pile to support the superstructure. Later, actually people find that, you know, okay, the lime column area, say for example this area, you know, say for example the shear strength of the soil in the clay is so less, but when a lime column itself, you know, when you treat and all that, that material, you know, it has some zone of influence around it, some this thing, definitely that is a much stronger material than that. So, one can treat that as a pile, and people have also observed that it is not just about treating it as a pile. In fact, lime can diffuse, you know, the thing is that lime, you know, because if they know the permeability of the nearby soil, the diffusion can take place, and the lime can in fact stabilize a more amount of soil. Okay. It is a very important concept here. People have studied lot of the work on this, you know, they did lot of work on diffusion of lime in soils, and in fact in many places in Madras IIT and many other places, where even in Institute of Science. So, what we do is that we create lime columns, then we study the concentration of cations, right, calcium ions. If you study the calcium ions concentration, definitely it will tell you that with initially it was less, but as you go on with time, concentration of cations also increases next to the lime column. So, this is a very important concept, and this is somewhat different compared to what we know in the case of stone columns. In the stone columns and prefabricated vertical drains, they have some area that exists around them, which will make them somewhat, we say that it is an equivalent area over which the lime pile or the stone column or the PVD can be effective. PVD is effective because drainage is an important area function. Stone column is effective because there is a load sharing mechanism that comes into picture, and then because of the load redistribution, the area of influence is somewhat higher. Because of the diffusion of lime here, that area of influence is governed by this factor. So, the area of influence is an important concept in soil mechanics. One should understand what material if you put, what happens, and what is the area of influence it has. Like people can, I just mentioned, gave an example that the sand drains should not be confused with sand columns. Sand drain is a sand drain, it is only for drainage, it has some area and permeability is a controlling factor, and whereas sand column is something a strength related aspect, strength and stiffness come into picture. Okay. So, how do you do this installation? So, for example, this is a hopper, like this can be connected to any of the vehicles or something like that. Just insert and you have lime aggregates and materials and all that. Go to the you have a compressed air arrangement, apply to discharge the lime into the hole. As the casing is withdrawn, you are trying to remove the casing and then the lime is getting added here, and you can complete the whole process and you have the lime column formed. And actually, see, the thing is that in the design of stone columns, actually we said that there are a couple of things like a flocculation and ion exchange process. The water content is removed, as I just mentioned, because of the hydration. The lime columns produces a consolidation effect, like as I just mentioned, a pre-consolidation effect in which water content is removed, and because of which there is a strength gain effect on the treated soil without additional loading. I have not done any additional loading to reduce the water content. I have just added lime, which has a equivalent effect. And why? Because it has even lateral expansion also. This is another important factor that can come into picture later. We will see that even the lime columns also have the same thing, except that like quicklime and all that, it, as I just mentioned, it forms the slaked lime. This is a quicklime and this is slaked lime, and then you have the heat of reaction, and ion exchange takes place. This is one important, same mechanisms also control the stone column or the lime column behavior, and pozzolanic activity or the pozzolanic effect is also there. And another important thing, the lime piles themselves have a considerable strength and therefore act to reinforce the soil as well as alter its properties. So, there are so many mechanisms that it has advantages that and then it is cost effective also, it is very economical. So, normally what we do is that, suppose you want to design, we are essentially looking at the consolidation dewatering effect as the main process of strength gain, and normally I will just show you a design method how it can be done. Okay. And how is that the strength of the soil is improved? People have seen that, like you have seen just now, that the CBR is nothing but the strength of this in situ soil, and you add lime, the strength of the soil is increased by about 30 times, 40 times, 15 times in some cases. In situ CBR test was done in some cases, and we have seen that. Even you have saw the results of the unconfirmed compression tests from Professor Pala, where it was very clear. Even in our lab we have a lot of experimental results where it was very clear that the treatment using lime produces strength improvement. Okay. So, actually what you get from the lab is something that it is just for a simple mixing, and then in a simple testing people normally do, and then they make some inferences that it is very effective. But what happens in the field is that the area that you are trying to handle is very big, and the strength of the soil stabilized in the field is much higher than that of samples prepared in the laboratory. The soil stabilized in situ is subjected to a pressure from the overburden and from the surrounding soil, where the confining pressure for the samples that were stored in the small containers is small. Like, see, the thing is that in the lab what are you doing, the thing is that if you want to do you mix the soil, untreated soil is one plastic bag, then 2% plus lime, 2% lime plus soil is one plastic bag, 4% lime plus soil is another plastic bag. So, you test all the three of them, and then you have a low strength here in without lime, and then higher strength in some 2% lime, and much higher strength in 4% lime. But then you are just trying to just compare all the three of them without bothering about the confining effects in the field. it will show you some 30% difference or 20% difference in the lab, but then in the field what is happening, because of the say for example, if you are handling 10 meters height of the depth of embankment, definitely the pressure at 2 meters is 22 into 20 kPa, say for example 2 meters is 40 kPa or maybe 35 kPa, but then if you are handling at 10 meters, definitely 10 meters into 180 kPa, it is 180 kPa it could be, and it is much different, right. So, the stresses are going to have a significant influence, in situ stresses are going to have a significant influence on the behavior of lime treated soils, which is not. So, what we want to say is that the behavior of lime treated soil in the field may be much higher compared to what you find in the lab. That is what is the inference of this. Actually, people have observed the settlements. You can see that this is the stabilized area, this is unstabilized area. In the case of an embankment, you have about it is a small embankment, 0.6 meters height and 10 kPa is the load only, and these are all the settlement profiles, settlement in centimeters. So, like these are 10 centimeters, okay, 100 mm. You can see that in the case of a treated soft soil, the settlements are only here, like at the beneath the foundation they are maximum, it is maybe 5.5 here. This is 8 meters is the width of the embankment. So, about 5.5 here, then it comes down like this, okay. At the edges of course it is minimum. So, 1025, say for example, it has been measured for 16 days, 66, 140, 351 and 545, 1025 days. So, there are different time durations and you also have settlements. In the case of untreated soil, you can see that it is very high. So, from strength point of view as well as settlement point of view, lime treatment has been very effective. So, how do you go about the design? Design is something that we need to understand, and first thing that we should do is that what is the optimum content or the lime that we should use for treating the soil. What we should do is that, as I just mentioned, maybe you can take the unconfined compression test as the basis, like say for example, you are trying to construct an embankment on a soft soil, take the soil at its natural water content, make a sample, add lime, make a sample and get its unconfined compression test or all other properties, like you need to estimate both strength and compressibility, permeability, everything, measure all the properties with in the undisturbed state, and then measure them at various contents, lime contents like 2%, 4%, 8% or whatever. Then you could find out the optimum content at which, without sacrificing any other thing, maybe you will be able to achieve the required settlement or shear strength improvement and all that. Now, the design criteria, you will have a design criteria that say for example, there is so much load coming because of the road construction, and what should be the strength of the soil below the road, how much it should be, one can design. So, essentially what people have seen is that 5 to 8% of the unslaked lime is added. So, that is fine, from the laboratory one can get that information. And how do you get the ultimate bearing capacity? The ultimate bearing capacity is obtained from the strength of the samples, like actually we for example, unconfined compression test is one simple device, simple test one can do, and as I just said, the confining effects are there, particularly when you are trying to use this. So, like suppose the unconfined compression test divided by 2 will give you the C value, is it not? So, you will get a C value and then use 5.14 C for Cu as the ultimate bearing capacity, and you treat that as soil clay, maybe Cu could be 10 kPa and it got improved to 50 kPa because of the line treatment. So, there is a 5 times increase in the ultimate bearing capacity, even if you multiply by 5.14, the ratio being same for both cases, the ultimate bearing capacity could be 250 instead of 50 kPa, now it could be 250 kPa. So, the factor of safety could be about 2 or whatever. Bearing, the factors of safety have certain sanctity here in our geotechnical engineering, though you may have different factors for different conditions. So, in this, we do not consider the strength increase like because of other chemical reactions and all that. It is just that we try to say that the like because of the we do not give the importance to what you call the overburden effect. Say as you go down, definitely the strength improvement is going to be higher, but we will not give importance to that, and we just take a conservative design that yeah, the strength is same with depth. So, that is a conservative assumption. And so for example, the unit, the same assumption one can use when you have the loads could be about 20 kPa actually. The thing is, even the IRC code says that you have to take the load on the highway as 1.2 times the unit weight of the soil, 1.2 times the height, say 1.2 into h is, say for example 1 meter, 1 meter or 2 meters, and unit weight is we know. So, you just multiply, it comes to about 22 kPa and all that. It is also similar, 20 kPa is what we assume for bridges or pavements and all that. And if you want to design an embankment in a place where the soft soil is there, you have to use this load about 20 to 20 kPa you should use, and the stress strength of the soil could be low. The thing, these are all immaterial for us how to design this. Another important point that we should give weightage to that is that suppose you are trying to construct a structure here. Okay. So, you need to calculate the ultimate bearing capacity is one thing, like the thing is that bearing capacity is one thing, you should also calculate differential settlements and total settlements, that is very important, then the design is complete. So, how do you calculate the differences, the settlements? There is a simple assumption here that you apply load like this, maybe whatever is the pressure that comes whether from the highway or something, whatever, or even from a building. The total shear, the periphery is this, which is just here. The shear stress along the periphery of the soil is, say, T. It should be, so you can calculate the shear stress, and the shear stress you can what is the load, the thing is the shear stress is nothing but the load that is coming, load divided by the perimeter. So, the thing is that you have some load, say for example 100 tons or 1000 tons, whatever is the total building load, take that, and then say for example you are trying to construct, this is 10 meters depth and this is 10 meters width. So, 10 meters into 10 meters is a plan area, say for example this is 10 meters, this is 10 meters and the depth is 10 meters as a small example, and that is actually you can calculate the perimeter, and the total load is say for example 1000 or whatever is the load, 1000 divided by this area of cross section will give you the load that is coming, that should be less than, that is called the shear stress that is coming here, and vertical stress actually you can have that is actually the vertical stress. You can also, this is the way they are computing the shear stress, it should be less than the Cu of the soil divided by some factor of safety. So, this should be satisfied, and apart from it there is a difference settlement, as I just mentioned, we should calculate, and the difference settlement is like the thing is this column may settle and all that. So, the perimeter shear stress can be calculated from the following equation when the load transfer to the bottom of the stabilizer is neglected. So, this is what I just mentioned, like P plus L is plus perimeter and this is a weight. So, once you know the weight of the structure and all that, one can calculate the factor of safety is there. So, when the load is unevenly distributed, the columns could be concentrated at the parts of the structure with the highest load. This is another simple way that we try to do that. When the loads are unevenly, say for example in the case of an embankment, there is no problem at all, and you just add all the loads and then put the columns in a proper way with proper spacing, and it is completely done. But when there is unevenness, say for example, you are trying to construct heavy loaded area in some place, heavy loaded. So, how do you do that? It also could be done, it is not an issue at all. We also can estimate the difference settlement. We have, the thing is that there is a simple method. See, the thing is that the method of estimation is that, as I just showed you, that alpha which you have here in this point needs to be calculated. This alpha you can get in this expression, like what we do is that the shear stress divided by the shear modulus. The shear modulus is nothing but the shear of the material. The thing is that you are trying to talk about the improved soil. What is that? The GB is nothing but the equivalent shear modulus of the soil that depends on the stiffness and the dimensions of the lime columns. So, you have to calculate the stiffness of that to calculate the distortion. So, the GB is nothing but, it is like we try to take some ratio and proportional type of formula. We know the stiffness of the soil, clay, say for example 10 MPa, 10 MPa, 5 MPa, it can be very low value. Say for example rock, it could be 100 MPa. For steel it could be some MPa, G is a shear modulus, okay. So, you can calculate the shear modulus knowing Young's modulus also. So, B minus ND, N is the number of columns and then D. This is the area over which the clay is there, right. This is the total area. So, you are trying to use some ratio and proportion method knowing the foundation size, like say for example B into D and the number of columns, and also the G of the clay, you get this GB. Once you get this GB, you can calculate the inclination. So, this is one way of calculating the difference settlement, and of course, total settlement also could be calculated. So, what we see is that we have simple design methods which are quite useful, and we will see some how to handle this. Thank you.